The top class of 25 recruit Tounde Yessoufou has finally set his official visit for UCLA in October. Can the Bruins sway him from other blue bloods like Kentucky, Kansas, and UConn? Or do they have to go somewhere else for their top 25 recruit?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From now until September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday tickets from YouTube and YouTube TV. Check out FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Where we get started today is we're talking UCLA recruiting for Mick Cronin in the class of 25. I've already talked about in a few episodes ago on Locked On UCLA, there's a specific type of player they're going to look for that really doesn't have a lot of eligibility left, right? Between Kobe Johnson, between Lazar Stefanovic, they're not going to have that 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" wing. I know Bilodeau's 6'8", 6'9", so is Daly Jr. and Kyle, but they're more post-like players. They're looking for that guy that can handle the ball, who can score, who can shoot somewhat, and be that guy that can maybe flex between a 4 and a 3 and be a very athletic guy in a 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" wingspan type of guy, right? So this is what UCLA is looking for. Tounde Yessoufou recently announced his official visits to, I believe, 7 of his top 10 schools. He said 7 official visits along the likes of Kentucky, Kansas, UConn, Tennessee, Baylor, ASU, and UCLA. He's going to go to UCLA. I believe I thought it was reported, it's listed on one of his recruiting pages on 24/7 Sports, late October. I think October 25th is what it said at the time for when he's coming. One of the later visits. This is a guy who, I believe in an interview to 24/7 Sports, when he talked about his scouting outlook, is a big-time Kentucky fan. So you're going to have to woo somebody who is going to go to Big Blue Madness, right? It's the big Kentucky event. He's going to go check out Baylor, a recent national champion, SEC country, even ASU, right? One of the Hurleys. Both Hurleys are going to try and go get Yessoufou. And this is a Santa Maria kid. So this is a guy in the Central Coast, talented, that can bring in a lot to UCLA if they can convince him to come to the Bruins. He's technically a 6'5", 6'6", depending on what you want, small forward. So he would fit what you would need for UCLA, right? 6'5", 6'6", a taller, lankier guard that can replace as a small forward, as a 3 on the perimeter, the likes of Stefanovic, Kobe Johnson, what may have you, as a kid who, depending on the composites, 4 or 5-star, top 3 in the state of California, top 20 in the country nationally, small forward, power forward, depending on what you see him. He could be an undersized power forward, more like a wing for UCLA. And it's looking a bit warmer for UCLA, considering they got an official visit. But when you got a kid who's already proclaimed to be a Kentucky fan, now it's a little different now that it's Mark Pope there. I know Bill Self will have something to say. Danny Hurley always has his way now that he's the biggest coaching star, arguably, in college basketball currently. So can UCLA sway this kid? I'm not entirely sure. But with him sending an official visit, it means UCLA has a chance. If they can do so, with, I believe, Kentucky having one of the later visits, they have a chance. I'm just not entirely sure that's the way it's going to go. But there are 2 other kids with a similar build that UCLA is looking at, right? There's Nick Kamenia, who is right in UCLA's own backyard. We've talked about him before. Studio City kid from Harvard Westlake. UCLA just got Trent Perry out of Harvard Westlake. They had gotten Corona Centennial for a couple. They went to Harvard Westlake to close out their class of 24 recruiting. Now to go to 25, why not go back there? Go back to the greater Los Angeles area. And if you miss out on Yessoufou, you've got a 6'8" small forward who's just as good, 4-star product, who is a top 5 kid, just a couple of slots behind Yessoufou, as one of the better gets in a similar position for UCLA. That is where he's looking like a potential UCLA product. Now, that's another battle for blue bloods between Duke, North Carolina, Arizona, Gonzaga. The Bruins are going to have they're going to have to find a way to compete with some of these guys because he said his official visit for Duke. He said his official visit for North Carolina. Those are back-to-back days, back within a week of each other in September. He's going to visit the likes of Arizona in August. So can UCLA win these wars in the blue blood recruiting? For a little bit there, it didn't seem like UCLA was. They went very international in 23. In 24, Mick Cronin went heavy on the transfer portal, got what he liked out of Eric Freeney, and then when Trent Perry was able to become available after he decommitted with the coaching changes at USC, the Bruins said, we are going to create a spot. And with the expected expansion of scholarships for men's basketball, that will create 2 more open official spots up to 15 like they currently have in women's basketball for scholarship spots. The Bruins can go after a Kamenia. They can go after a Yessoufou, both 6'8", 6'5", type guys that play similar positions, do it in different ways. Yessoufou more of a 36% three-point shooter. I like to believe Kamenia maybe similar, maybe a little bit better from 3. But then there's another name who is also interested in UCLA. You got Chris Nwuli, another Sierra Canyon kid. So think about some of these places UCLA is trying to recruit from. You got Sierra Canyon, where UCLA, I like to believe, treated Amari Bailey well. He just had to fight through a little bit of injury. Would have been, if healthy, I think the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year. And if he stayed longer, would have been a much better NBA prospect coming out of college than he was after his true freshman campaign. Then you look at where Harvard Westlake is. All right, you just got Perry, a McDonald's All-American. You hope that relationship fosters into potential community kid. They're not going to get all 3 of these kids. I don't think so. Yes, maybe they'd love to stockpile multiple kids in the same year at a similar position, but we can't forget that there are going to be kids in the portal, and Cronin's already proved after his bickering and complaining towards what was the lack of NIL funding in the UCLA men's basketball side, where they couldn't compete with these other blue bloods, where they couldn't compete what was being offered. Now he could, after securing 6 transfers and 2 freshmen, with a spot completely funded by NIL, which is like the Sky Clark position, right? The Kendrick Perkins NIL scholarship, basically. So one of these guys is working their ways to UCLA. One of these guys has to come to UCLA, I think. It's a position of need. There's a clear interest between 3 of them in varying degrees. Yessoufou there's no crystal balls out there, but I think I was seeing on social media, Wildcat fans from Kentucky, very confident that they're saying, cat. They're saying he's basically a Kentucky Wildcat. Although, then you got Kamenia in your own backyard, or if things fall through, you still got a 6'7" kid from Chatsworth and Sierra Canyon who's interested in UCLA, Louisville, San Diego State, TCU, and USC. While Eric Musselman's going to have something to say about that, one of these 3 guys who has UCLA in their top 5, top 6, or top 10 accordingly, slowly setting their official visits as the class of 25 recruiting is going to heat up immediately with schools coming back into session, or like for UCLA, they don't come back into session until late September. It's going to heat up immensely. And the Bruins are going to have to pick up their pitches, get those NIL offers out, and see exactly which of these 3 that are currently interested in the position where Mick Cronin needs some depth next year after some seniors graduate. It's one of those 3, I think, between Nwuli, Yessoufou, and Kamenia. And I don't necessarily have a favorite. I think they all have their own good attributes. They're right where UCLA needs. But what they need to do is find ways to contribute to the NIL cause, which, according to Pete Thamel, the Bruins did just hire somebody to replace their top fundraising operation guy in Josh Rebholz with a new person. We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. All right, maybe you're listening to this, you're watching this, you're like, man, it's after lunchtime. It's that food coma. You're tired. You just need that pick-me-up for the second half of the day. But you're not alone, because research shows that more than 70% of us hit a wall after lunch. So let us use a 5-hour energy shot that can leap over that wall instead of crashing right into it. All right, so there's 0 sugar, convenient, portable sizes to bring with you, and it's the perfect pick-me-up to get stuff done, especially after that post-lunch blue that you're going to feel. You leap literally with that energy boost through that proverbial wall. And the website's got flavors galore: watermelon, tropical grape, tropical burst grape, and more. And you can build a 12-pack, 24-pack delivered right to your own door. All you got to do is go to 5hourenergy.com. That is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB. Again, that's LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. The offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. Cruising on to the second segment of Locked On UCLA. Zach with you guys. We're talking how UCLA, after they're trying to continue in the games of recruiting, that I would say they won one year. Yeah, right. This team in recruiting for Mick Cronin was able to go onto the portal, prove they had the NIL bucks. But how do they do that again and again and again? Well, according to ESPN's Pete Thamel, who I believe on August 26th reported that with what sources he has, UCLA has what looks to be the replacement to their top fundraiser for over a decade plus, Josh Rebholz, right? So the new person is looking like Stephanie London Krogius. Okay, Stephanie London Krogius, who is going to be potentially an executive senior associate athletic director and chief development officer for the Bruins. What does that even mean? Let's say that again. Executive Senior Associate Athletic Director and Chief Development Officer. Some of us don't even know what that means. What does that even, you get these dream jobs, you get these big time fluffy word jobs, and you're like, what does that even mean? Basically, she's working on raising money in the NIL department. And the person she probably is theoretically, maybe not directly replacing, is the top donor in Josh Rebholz, who resigned back in early May of 24, reading the article posted by Ben Bolch of the LA Times. This was somebody who was already away from the program, away from UC Athletics, but did both when it came to getting numbers in, did extreme numbers, was able to get UCLA's fundraising record, was a part of that, which brought in $80 million back in fundraising efforts in 2014. With his help, UCLA apparently doubled the amount of donors from $25,000 gifts. That number went from 16 to more than 260. Now, if you do that math, that's like over hundreds of millions to billions of dollars in donations to UCLA. Now, Rebholz did have his own set of controversies, one being the Varsity Blues, the others being just other incidences, and that was listed in this LA Times article, which Ben Bolch wrote back in May of 24. Old news for him. This is a guy that put in numbers, but had some controversies around him. He went and resigned, had a new job. But that left UCLA with a hole looking for NIL opportunities and how to compete. And yes, while UCLA was able to get all those guys, Deshaun Foster was able to keep Jay Tuia going from the portal. Even recently, when Chip Kelly was able for a moment to woo Dante Moore to UCLA before they all left and departed out, they were able to find a way to raise enough NIL support to get those guys. But the problem with the other schools is it's not just the one guy. They get the guy, and then they get the next guy, and they get the other guy, and then they get the fourth guy, which is exactly what Cronin was able to do this offseason. They got his guy, they got that guy, they got this guy. Oh, you're decommitting, we're going to get you. Oh, where was that scholarship spot? We'll just find a way to donate a whole made-up scholarship until the NCAA, which is hardly even a thing anymore, allows us to expand scholarships to roster limits, and then we can put you on scholarship for another year after we just pay you with NIL bucks. So what Stephanie London Krogius is expected to be, according to the Pete Thamel report, is somebody who can be a fundraising role to help move the school, according to what Pete Thamel posted on social media, help the school move and adapt to a new area where there's a premium on raising money for athletic departments and the NIL. The big thing is you've got them at Westwood. You've now got the champions of Westwood. The Bruins are going to have to compete if they want to move into this new day and age of recruiting. It's not just, oh, look, the glitz and the glamour of Los Angeles. You can get a premium education. You can have so many opportunities just by being in LA, but there's also a lot of pro sports teams. There's other college teams. There's so many colleges in the greater Los Angeles area. There's so many schools on the West Coast that you're going to have to deal with, all in 2 to 3, 4 different conferences, basically, up and down California, up to Oregon and Washington, just literally across town as well. How do you prepare for spreading money that has to be, given out to former athletes, money to new athletes? It's just a headache having to deal with it, right? I don't envy what Martin Jamont has to be the brainchild of not just championing a program that's old motto is champions made here. It's how do you do that in the day and age where everybody wants to cut it, but then you see the Olympics and now everybody wants to fund those times too. And then how do you go get the big 5-star where if we don't get them, we're going to yell at Deshaun Foster. We're going to yell at your GMs, right? And Alabama's paying their GM like 6-7 figures just to stay there so he wouldn't go to USC. And then you've got, oh, wait, how do you get more fans in the stands without giving tickets for $5 and not being a laughing stock? And wait, how does UCLA basketball get that? Well, you also split that and share that with the women as well. It's a whole crazy thing they're dealing with. Oh, by the way, everybody's mileage is tripling, quadrupling in every sport, generally, right? Every sport that's moving to the Big Ten is going to have to get charter flights, deal with more increased nutrition, mental health, schooling opportunities. And how do you just bring in the top-tier student athletes without lowering the bar for one of the most applied to universities, public universities in the world, in the University of, California system? It's nuts. So how to balance all that, which just sounds like a constant, just little swirl of emotions, it is one of the tougher jobs that you could have, let alone AD, finding the right NIL opportunity. Remember, UCLA's got a new chancellor, not just the interim one they have. They have an actual new chancellor that will be transitioning, I believe, either later this year or early next year. Coming over, former president of Miami, was able to generate some buzz and money over there to get some support, which at the U you'd think would have a lot of support for a smaller private school. But he showcased support for athletics. You bring in an athletic department that's now attempting with this big move to the Big Ten. They want to be a competitor. We don't want to be a laughing stock. That's not what UCLA is. The big brands, yes, they're going to poke fun at the lack of people who have been cheering for the football team and the Rose Bowl and everything. But large in part, the amount of missteps overall has not been too great in every single sport over the course of UCLA's history, which is how do you compete in the next day and age? Well, you're going to have to do what everybody else is doing and not just do it like haphazardly. You've got Ohio State, who is not going to – they came out, I believe I said, with the Columbus Dispatch in an episode last week. I forget if it was the athletic director or who it was in the Columbus Dispatch that said, all of our Olympic sports, it might turn into club sports with travel, according to it, right? Look more like a club team. But UCLA wants to dominate all these sports from anything and you name it. Olympic sports that how many UCLA athletes came and won medals or were competing for golds or silvers or representing the U.S. or any nation across the world. UCLA is one of the teams beyond just Stanford, one of the gold standards on the West Coast. So it's a battle of not only competing in just football and men's basketball, it's how do you compete for the value in every sport while battling and juggling Title IX, battling and juggling what every player's value is, how you spread that out evenly, and how you entice people, which used to not be the case. You could just say, come to Southern California, and that was as simple as, hey, come to UCLA. Boom. Now it's a little more complicated than that. Even though Chip Kelly made it super complicated when it came to recruiting football players, there is some level of complexity to recruiting. But also when you look at Deshaun Foster, what he's trying to bring in, it's not that hard because there are kids who dreamt of going to UCLA that want a good education in addition to being a student athlete while finding and getting a reasonable, amount of money towards them, whether it's a scholarship, a little more, combination of things. It's a juggling act. And UCLA is trying their best to prove to everybody else that they are not just we're going to sit and take our TV money. We want to compete with everybody. It starts with their first game, football-wise, against Hawaii on August 31st. So let's take a look at what Hawaii did against Delaware State and why it should look very good for UCLA in their 2024 opener. Hey, Locked On UCLA fans. I want to take a moment to give you a heads up about a brand new mobile game I think you're going to love. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. An amazing game, a simulation where you can step into the shoes of head coach Deshaun Foster and lead your college football program, the UCLA Bruins, to glory. Can you imagine the playoff game in the Rose Bowl or anything going for a national championship? Recruiting players, hiring staffs, overseeing training camps, and more. Every crucial detail of the program, it's all in your hands. Can you handle the pressure? You're responsible for calling plays offensively. Determining the success with your strategy over the course of the season will help shape the future and legacy of your program. It's completely free, Ultimate College Football Head Coach, 100% playable offline with no ads, on the go, when you want, wherever you want. And the code that you want to use to get a boost to your program, Locked On CFB. 100% free boost, Locked On CFB. Download the game by going to ultimate-cfb.com. Again, that's ultimate-cfb.com and look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football Head Coach, begin your coaching legacy today. All right, it's coming down to the end of the barbecue season. While you've stockpiled in all your grilling favorites, you can also earn back cash whenever you use Ibata. So you won't have to choose between the burgers or the hot dogs for the last grilling holiday. You can get both because Ibata is a free app that lets you earn cash back every single time you shop. Earn hundreds of items from groceries, from supplies, even toys. Make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibata user earns $256 per year. That could cover an entire shopping trip, the flight you want to go on, or just simply cashing in on that fancy dinner you've been craving. Ibata is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibata using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Go to the app, Google Play Store, download the free Ibata app, and start earning cash back and use the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA, Ibata, in the Google Play Store, App Store, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, UCLA taking on the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors in the complex that is on the campus of the University of Hawaii in Honolulu. It is a very, very small complex, but most importantly, the Bruins are taking on a team that just took down Delaware State, 35-14. The Bows were 40-point-plus favorites, right? I think they're 40.5, 40. It was ridiculous. The Bows were coming off a season where they're hoping to make a bowl game this year. And I'm going to nerd out a little bit and go between the whole backstory of why they played Delaware State, why Hawaii is only playing 12 games instead of 13 they usually play, and why they're playing two FCS teams in addition to a young FCS into transitioning FBS team in Sam Houston State in September, right? So remember, Delaware State not only is well across the country, that's a 10-hour flight, Hawaii has to pay for that. And just for a game that was not even as much of a beatdown as it should have been. 40-point favorites against a Delaware State team that last year not only was one of the worst teams, they were the worst teams in the FCS. To put this in perspective, UCLA fans, Delaware State in 2023 lost to NC Central 55-14. So UCLA destroyed NC Central. Okay, HBCU is a great celebration after the Michigan series got canceled, right? From one year to the next, Alabama State, NC Central. Cool. The first two times UCLA's ever played anybody from the FCS. Okay. Now, that team destroyed Delaware State last year. Destroyed them. And the remnants of that team came over to play Hawaii. And the reason why Hawaii had to play Delaware State in their opener was they were supposed to play Oregon in their 2024 opener in August. They were supposed to play Oregon, a delayed series because of COVID. And then Oregon this year canceled on them because they moved from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten. They wanted to get Oregon State on the schedule, so they canceled the Hawaii trip, which would have had them playing Oregon and UCLA in back-to-back weeks. They got to play. Then Hawaii was needing a game. Well, because Oregon backed out, Hawaii got $1 million payout for them canceling two of the three games they were supposed to play in a series that's scheduled back in 2014 with games that are supposed to happen in 2031 and 2032. And in this year with COVID and conference realignment canceling everything. So now they had $1 million to go spend on 100,000 six-figure trip for Delaware State to come out. So basically, despite all they had to pay for as a visiting team to get out there, basically what happened was Hawaii still made a profit by going out there playing, and they have to go 7-5 to make a bowl game because you can't use 2 FCS wins toward a bowl berth. So they have to go 7-5 in a year where they're actually not playing 13 games for the first time since COVID because Hawaii has the exemption and all those things. Craziness, right? Which means instead of being prepared by playing the number 3 or 4 team in the country, they got to play Delaware State, who was down 14-0 after the first quarter, and then actually tied the game in the third against Hawaii. Overall, Hawaii had 8 more first downs, a couple more passing, a couple more rushing. They only had Hawaii 128 rushing yards, 4.7 yards per carry, and they had 203 passing yards on a 50% completion rate with 2 passing touchdowns. It wasn't the most exciting of dominant performances because they had a punt return for a touchdown by Tylen Hines. They had a Mokia Atamalala touchdown catch because it still runs in the family between Titus going to play Tamatoa, who plays for Hawaii. He got a big pass from Braden Shager, who is their returning starting quarterback. So they have returners. They have a lot of guys, 12,000 for their home opener. They can only host up to 16,000, 17,000 in the Clarence T.C. Ching complex, which is their on-campus basic practice field instead of the Aloha Stadium. This is a game where UCLA should win by at least 3 scores, or we should be very much worried, I would say. Unless Hawaii is saving some things, or maybe they were worried because remember, Delaware State missed their flight after it's all said and done. All this work to get a last-minute game against Delaware State because Hawaii's athletic director, I fact-checked this. I saw this somewhere on Twitter. I fact-checked it. Hawaii's athletic director's son in 23 played at Delaware State for the football team. So they made a call, and then that's how they got that last-minute game scheduled in late 24, in what was a late stage to get your first game scheduled in 24, just for Hawaii to get their 12th game, not their 13th game, just their 12th game of the year, where they couldn't mix and match with the year where they had 2 or 3 buys on the schedule. Does Hawaii, with all the travel they have to do. We talk all about conference realignment. Think about the travel Hawaii has to do, okay? So they barely beat a team that was 1-10, that was barely making it, that had no time or had limited time because of traveling, and they mixed it. I think they had a couple of flights to Delaware State just to get there in time for a 10-hour travel, 6-hour time difference, right? The game was 6 p.m. Hawaii time, midnight Sunday morning on August 25th for Delaware State fans staying up to watch, listen, tune in to that game. And still, Hawaii had to score in the middle part of the third quarter to pull away, and 2 touchdowns going in the fourth quarter on a couple of passes from Braden Shager and a Braden Shager run, who rushed for 2 touchdowns, did Shager, and threw for a pair. Showcased a little bit of a dual threat ability there. And remember, I think there was also supposed to be big storms. So now there's crazy winds at the time, 19-mile-per-hour winds with 80-degree weather because there were, I think, some weather concerns around Hawaiian Islands at that time. So maybe that kind of threw off the rhythm of the passing game where they just want to go boom, 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 boom. So the expectation is for Kaikamaloa to have to deal with the secondary. They're going to have a lot of communication. I do think that we'll find, hopefully, a lot of success for UCLA's D-line in this game. The secondary should see a lot of passes come their way. I'd like for them to have a pick or 2. And UCLA should be able to do what they want offensively. Now, Hawaii, they did have a busted coverage that led to a big play, an eventual 6-yard touchdown run by Jaden Sutton late by Delaware State. Wasn't the most important performance for a team that was favored by 40 points at home with a team traveling across the country, one of the worst teams in all of Division I college football last year. That's how bad Delaware State was in 23. One of the worst in college football. And a last-second schedule, and Hawaii could barely beat them. So now UCLA, I think, started as 13.5-point favorites. It's actually turning into a 2-score favorite. UCLA, in my mind, should win this game by 3 scores. And if they only win this game by 17, it's because Hawaii scored 2 in the fourth. Whatever it is. So we should be excited for UCLA to hopefully have a lot of time, a lot of domination. The Bruins truly dominated Hawaii, won in 21, and then turned that into an LSU victory. So if the Bruins can combine those things sandwiched around a bye and an Indiana Big Ten home opener, we could have a lot of fun in 21. All right? We should have a lot of fun from 21 into 24. But for now, it's looking like UCLA, if they show up, despite a team that's got those jitters, got the game out of their way, they better take care of business because Hawaii did not look that impressive, and the numbers don't back it up. We'll get into more detailed things across the rest of the week, but UCLA is now looking like a 3-score favorite the closer we get to the game. Now get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.